All right, so can you kind of explain what the M500 format is? This Saturday, announcement came out, format changed for the Millennium Series.
Correct.
So what is the format that we're playing in Europe now?
The Millennium Series has adopted the M500, whereby every player is allowed an allocation of 500 paintballs that comprises of a maximum allowance of a loader and 2 pods. Now, you are permitted to shuffle pods between players per point. So if a guy goes out with 1, another can have 3 type of thing. So as a team, it's probably easier to say that the allowance per point is 2,500 paintballs.
So the way that we understand it's going to be enforced is you're going to go out with a full hopper plus 2 pods.
Correct.
Is there any enforcement on size of hopper, size of pods?
I believe that there will be a maximum size for each component. So for example, the maximum hopper size is 260. The maximum pod size is 165, I believe. But you can't use a 260 and 2 165s because you then get 590.
Right.
So, unless of course you have refs that can't count.
So, what's the initial reaction amongst players that you've spoken to in Europe on it, or teams that you've spoken to? And I guess we could start the pro level.
Saturday, literally the Saturday gone when it was announced, the initial reaction was fear. A lot of the professional players openly posted on their social medias how bad they thought it was for the sport. Now, this is their opinion and they're completely entitled to it. I think a lot of the shrewder personnel in the sport kind of contemplated playing on the new layouts, because the bunkers have also changed for this year, with the new format and seeing how it actually performed. So we were fortunate enough to be doing a clinic this past weekend with a team from Norway and all over Europe called Poison Ivy. And we trained all day on the Saturday, found out the news and decided to play the new format on the Sunday on the new layout, on the new WPBO bunkers. It played out great. It played out absolutely fantastic. No one ran out of paint. Everyone had a more aggressive mindset that you can't just sit there and stop a lane. It's better to be proactive, go, get that field position that you're trying to prevent them from taking, and close out the point. So it makes for more entertaining paintball. The big center 50, wind bunker, I believe they're calling it, played an important part. People can make bigger moves off the break. Games do have a faster pace. I think there was a statistic from the games that we played on Sunday as an entire training group, 48 points, 1 stalemate.
Wow.
So it's no longer a case of sit and wait it out and the most patient team wins. In my opinion, the most proactive team has a bigger advantage now.
So how do you see this affecting the current teams playing in the Millennium as far as play style? So you'll have teams that are good lock-up teams that just sit on the zones, and then you'll have the more aggressive teams. Obviously, we would assume it's going to play more into the favor of the more aggressive teams.
Yep. I'm 100% in that camp, that you have to have a more aggressive mindset to benefit from this format. If you are a team that likes locking down the lanes, you can do that, but you can't do it as well, and you can't do it as long as you used to be able to in an unlimited paint format. So I think you have to adapt. I think the lockdown teams will still chew up the teams that aren't good at being aggressive, but as those teams get better and get more experience at it, it's going to change the dynamic of the game and the hierarchy within each of the divisions.
From your understanding, what's the Millennium Series thought process on pushing this format out? What's the major reasoning behind going with the M500?
My understanding, how it's put across by the Millennium is that it is to encourage growth in paintball. By limiting the cost, they deduce that it will attract more players, new teams, etc., etc. I think that's true to a certain extent. I think if you take an extreme example of, you know, a case and a quarter per point, you're playing a race to 4 format, which is average, let's say. You go to the maximum points that can be scored, so 4-3, 7 points, case and a quarter, you're into 10 box territory for a match, just under 10 boxes, I believe. Add a bit of chrono paint, let's call it 10 boxes between friends. You know, 4 prelims, 40 boxes, 4 finals games, 80 boxes. Admittedly, this is a worst case scenario, but for a seemingly affordable limited paint scenario format, that's a lot of paint.
Right.
You know, so it's almost like saying we've limited the maximum that you will spend,
right,
and that's 10 cases a match.
So do you think this will decrease the cost for teams training?
I think it will as they learn, because I think as they learn, they're going to win fast or lose fast, because they no longer have that safety net of being able to sit there and duke it out. If you're the guy who runs to the 30 and tries to lock off the snake, you can't do that for 5 minutes anymore. You know, you maybe can do that well for a minute, but then you've got to be proactive and, you know, seize control.
So as someone who coaches teams, what are the big changes going to be in philosophy on how you go about that? Or what are the more important things that you're going to work on now, whereas, you know, in the past maybe you are working a lot on laning and holding those zones off?
Yeah, I mean,
things like that.
In the past, we worked almost exclusively on the fundamentals. You know, your snap shooting, your running and shooting, etc. You know, and the theories behind all of those components. For me now, it's honestly, it's fantastic because it fits in with how I used to play paintball.
Right.
Game plans go out the window. You need to know how to play paintball to really excel.
Right.
In these circumstances. If you're the player that can dictate the pace of the game, slow things down, speed things up, change gears, make those moves, you know, completely dominate and destroy what the other team are trying to do, you're going to thrive. You're going to go from good to great, you know, in a relatively short space of time. Training wise, I'm going to push every team I work with, so long as this format, you know, is in place, to be more proactive, to understand the benefits of taking that approach, to understand the risks of taking that approach. But you can't build in too many safety nets. You have to go and experiment. And a lot of players aren't used to playing in this style, so they need the exposure of it. If you play, let's call it traditional, pre-M500 paintball, you maybe get exposed to this style once or twice an event. If you want to really embrace this and take your game forward, you have to constantly expose yourself to it and set up practice days, you know, scrimmages, etc., drills, to expose this,
right,
to learn it, to show you what you need to work on. I mean, running and gunning to a corner, great. Running and gunning to a 50, supreme. Now, you know, that's the subtlety of how this changes everything. You have to be the player that can run and shoot to this big 50 win and shoot the corner. You have to be the corner who can sprint gunning to your corner and shoot the guy running up the center. You know, you're not looking for the little kills anymore. You're looking to bite a big chunk,
right,
and really take advantage.
Right. So here's another question.
Okay.
You have the World Paintball Organization,
Mm-hmm.
which the idea behind it was to unify rules
Yep.
across all leagues, rules and field formats. So we finally got that accomplished after years.
Yes.
And then a month later, Millennium Series goes and changes the whole format, and the NXL doesn't. So now
Yes.
we're at 2 drastically different formats between the U.S. and Europe. How do you see that working out moving forward?
We're in one sense, I agree, we are in drastically different formats. But in essence, the only difference is one has paint restrictions and the other doesn't.
Right.
Now, there's nothing to say that if you're playing unlimited paint, you can still get shot on the break. You can still get 1-for-1. You can still, everything can still happen to you. Same with the limited paint. The mindset is just what needs that tweaking and that changing. I think the fascinating thing, we'll see how the NXL players adapt to playing in the Millennium Series, and vice versa. You have people like Kevin Kuhn, for example, playing for Tauntauns in the Millennium, San Antonio X Factor in the NXL. You have Edmonton Impact, San Diego Dynasty. Players play both.
Right.
Sometimes with their team, sometimes, without. Tim Montress at Tampa Bay Damage NXL and 5-star in the Millenniums. So all of these players, all of these examples are experienced. They know how to deal with these changing circumstances.
Right.
They've played different rates of fire, for decades. So I'm sure they'll be, more than up to the challenge. I think it's, to a certain extent, it undermines what the WPBO was trying to achieve by now introducing a difference. And I think the timing maybe wasn't ideal in the sense that, as you rightly say, this was presented and then seemingly overnight,
Right.
a difference is introduced. Yeah. I mean, I think it would have been great if it had been publicly known that for 2017, everyone would be playing M500, M700, whatever. I mean, there was a lot of talk before this announcement that M500 might not be 500. It might be 700, 800, whatever.
Right.
And I mean, I think they have to find... The bigger challenge for me is if you change the pace of the game, the reffing has to step up. It can't be a case of taking the safe option of, 50 win bunker, player from either side goes, one of them bunkers the other, right, you're both out because you've got hits on you. It has to be a case of you shot him or her first, you're clean, you're out. You have the advantage for being the aggressor.
Right.
That's what needs dealing with, in my eyes. And that's what will make the difference between this being good for paintball or this just shifting paintball on a different tangent. So, I mean, bring in instant replays, do whatever you want. If you really want to push the sport forward, let's have refs with mics that can ask a third opinion or whatever it may be. Yes, we have to do it quicker, or have a slow motion camera that someone can watch off screen or whatever it may be. I know you can't cover everything and I know it takes extra investment, but it needs thinking about.
Right.
Even if you have a ref in a bubble so they can just sit there and watch this stuff.
Right.
I don't know, just spitballing ideas, but
Yeah.
It's got to be, that's an important component of this process that needs to be addressed. Now, they may already have plans to do this. I hope they have.
So now, Europe traditionally always comes out with the new ideas, especially when it comes to gameplay changes, right, in paintball. And US is usually slower to adopt.
Yeah.
Do you think the Millennium doing this is kind of, the Millennium tests it out, if it's effective, works well, we see this expanding to the NXL or other US leagues? Or is this, again, this is just opinion,
Sure.
but
Sure.
do you think this is just Millennium acting on their own regard? I guess the real question here is this a concentrated effort by the World Paintball Organization, or
Yep.
is this just Millennium Series doing their own thing?
I think this is a concerted effort in the background. I think that Laurent Hamet is a very influential person in paintball. Always has been, always will be. I'm certain that this topic could be debated for years and nothing actually happen. So, he's probably one of the few you know, in the know with the power to make a change, and has just decided we're going to do this. So let's do it. Let's play it out. Let's see how it goes. I think if he hadn't, or they hadn't, whatever the case may be, and I honestly don't know who's made that decision, then I think we could still be wondering if we should do it and have people voting for it and people voting against it, you know, in 2017, 2018. So I embrace it. I think it could be a positive thing if other, you know, stages of this are implemented, as in, you know, you have to improve the reffing,
Right.
you have to improve the infrastructure of the events to accommodate the new pace of the game. So, I mean, and ultimately, if it draws in spectators, great. There's no point in drawing in spectators if you're going to charge them through the nose to spectate.
Right.
You know, you need to, there needs to be a balance of, we've created something that people want to watch, let them watch it. Let's build the audience, let's grow paintball, and let's do it, you know, properly. Let's not create the opportunity to grow paintball and then smash it to the side because we're going to charge them 20 euros to watch.
Right.
Something that they don't know when they pay the 20 euros, how much they're going to enjoy it. Let's prove to them that they will enjoy it, and then, you know, make it affordable.
Right.
And freeze affordable. Is my personal opinion.
Got it.